Now Psalm 10, that belongs to it in many ways. In Psalm 9, here, that Goliath, or Pharaoh, however you want to look at it, the death of the son, he's merely a little picture of the Antichrist that is yet to come, Satan's man. And that means that he's to be put down someday. Now, when you come to this next psalm, Psalm 10 here, we have Satan's man. He's the man of the earth. And that means it's closely identified with this 9th psalm. And the wicked here, notice how he's described, and I'll just lift out a few high points here. Verse 1, Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? Now, what a picture that you have here. Now, notice this. He says here, the wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. Now notice there are two things that characterize the wicked here, pride and boasting. And you look around the world today, if you want to know who the wicked are of the great of the earth, they're filled with pride. They have no place for God at all. The second thing is they do a great deal of boasting. And I personally, I don't know about you, I'm not impressed by these men today, these politicians and world leaders that are always boasting of how they're going to solve the problems of the world. They remind me of that mountain that travailed and brought forth a little mouse. They boast great things, think they're God, and then they don't seem to be able to do anything. In fact, they do practically nothing at all. What a picture that you have here of the wicked. And this is a picture, of course, of Antichrist. He's the false Messiah. And you find that he's the one that is boasting. And he's identified in this psalm. I'm going to just move down and lift out certain things. Verse 4, the wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all of his thoughts. God doesn't just get into the conversation and in the speaking today. God is probably the most unpopular person that there is in the world right now. And why? Because the wicked are in the saddle of this earth and moving toward the time when the sin of man will lead to the man of sin and to this final Antichrist. Pride is what identifies him. And our translation says God is not in all his thoughts. I think we can make it more emphatic and more literal by translating it like this. All his thoughts are, there is no God. Now there begins to emerge on the scene for the first time in the history of the world those that are atheists. You see that there were none back in the beginning. They were too close to the Mooring mask of Revelation. After all, Noah knew a man who knew Adam. When you're that close to the Creator, you're not apt to deny the existence of God. And when the 10 Commandments were given, there's no commandment against atheism, but there was against polytheism, the worship of many gods. And that was the problem with man at the beginning. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment. Second, thou shalt not make unto thee any likeness of anything, heaven above, earth beneath the earth, etc., and etc. 2 commandments about polytheism, nothing about atheism. Why? There weren't any atheists at that particular time. Now they begin to appear as man moves away from Revelation, from the beginning. Why, then we find that man turns to atheism. And David will mention this several times in the Psalms. We'll wait till we get to another occasion to call attention to it. And there's something else that Antichrist will be. He'll be an atheist, filled with pride and boasting. Then there's something else that characterizes him. Verse 13 in Psalm 10 reveals, "Wherefore doth the wicked despise God? He hath said in his heart, Thou wilt not require it." Now, he not only doesn't believe in God, but he despises him. And it's very interesting to despise somebody that doesn't exist. But apparently, he'd have to exist to build up this kind of bitterness and hatred. But what he says here, "Thou wilt not require it," what he's saying, there is no judgment. And that, of course, is the position of men today. Great multitude of people are now emerging in our contemporary culture who are saying there is no God, or if he is, he's too far away for them to bother with him, and that there's not going to be any judgment. And that is the position that many, of course, today take. And when you take that position, then anything goes. And, of course, that's that philosophy that's back of the fact there ought not to be any kind of punishment or any kind of prisons or anything for criminals. And they say that the methods used today do not reform criminals. Whoever said that the purpose of the prisons and punishment was to reform? It never was. The purpose of it is to deter crime. That's the reason that God gave that. And judgment is coming. It's inevitable upon the earth. The closer we get to it, the less man believes in it. These are remarkable psalms, friends, because they amplify a great many truths that you get historically and prophetically in other portions of the Word. Now, will you notice as you move on down in this psalm here, verse 18, and I go right to the end, "To judge the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may no more oppress." The man of the earth, that's Antichrist. You see, the wicked with pride of countenance will not seek God. All of his thoughts are, there's no God. And we find that they deny the Father and the Son. And we find in all of this, what can man do? His ways are always grievous. Thy judgments are far above, out of his sight. As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. He hath said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity. That's man today, as he boasts of his prosperity, and that the fact he does not need God today.